The global population continues to face many challenging situations daily. Climate change, financial losses, fear, anxiety, sickness, death. It may sometimes seem like this season of gloom will never end, and many are losing hope. The future may be daunting, but in the midst of your hopelessness, I can assure you that God, who is the creator of this world, still has the world in the palm of his hands, and for this reason, you can still have hope.
We want to welcome you again to the Wednesday night Bible classes for the Stonecrest Church of Christ. We thank you so much each Wednesday evening at the 7 o'clock hour as you tune in to our Facebook page, our YouTube page, our website, in order to study with us from the Word of God. Now, we are cognizant of the fact that you have a plethora of other places whereby you can go and study the Bible on Wednesday nights. And given the plethora of other places you choose to study with us, thank you. We do not take that for granted. We appreciate your patronage, and we appreciate your attendance each Wednesday night. Before we begin our message tonight, we would remind you of two upcoming events at Stonecrest Church. Our young people are having a youth weekend in a couple of weeks. You will see a flyer to that effect before this study is over, if it has not already been displayed. And then in October, we celebrate our seventh church anniversary. It's interesting to think that 7 years ago we began this ministry, this congregation. The Lord has blessed it in a tremendous kind of way, and we're going to take our time to celebrate what the Lord has done. That's the weekend of October the 13th, October the 14th. I hope those dates are correct. If not, they'll be corrected with the flyer that will be displayed. But what is correct is that Wesley T. Leonard from the Southside Church in Orlando, Florida, is going to be our keynote speaker for the weekend. An outstanding songster, as well as some other outstanding singing groups, will be in concert on that weekend. Paul Williams, former member of mine from the Cashmere Gardens Church in Houston, Texas, and an outstanding songster and song leader, uniquely gifted, will be with us all weekend, and we're looking forward to that. As we said before the services, this study is over. Information will be given about both of those events. Now, we bring to conclusion this story, this study on the first two chapters of the book of Galatians. We have given you the background. We have given you the backstory. And so last week, we began looking at Paul's, hear me carefully, three narratives, three stories that he tells in the first two chapters to uh, uh, argue and to answer charges that had been leveled against him. They said about him that he was a Johnny come lately, that he was not a part of the original disciples that Jesus called. And so his apostleship has been questioned. His authority uh, to preach has been questioned. His message has been questioned. And so we're going to see tonight that some alligators had slipped in into the church. I'll explain that in the next few minutes. Some folk had slipped in, and they were dogging him everywhere he went in this region of Galatia. They had put a bad word out on him that he's not really an apostle. Uh, the message that he preaches lacks his understanding of the nature of the Mosaic law. He's preaching this gospel of grace uh, without telling people about their need to adhere to the law of Moses, and in particular, circumcision, the keeping of the Sabbath, and the kosher food laws, and which we will see tonight in the Galatians chapter 2. And so, what Paul is doing in the first two chapters, and it bleeds over into chapter 3, verse 1 is where we'll conclude here on tonight. So what Paul is now having to do is to answer some of these concerns, and we'll see them outlined for us in the first two chapters. Now, a quick review. Paul begins his argument in the form of three narratives. Follow me carefully now. In Galatians chapter 1, verses 13 through 24, it's going to be the first of these narratives. And Paul is going to say, uh, don't get this thing twisted. And that's what we called the lesson last week and again this week. Don't get it twisted. I was not called to be an apostle by man. I was not called to be an apostle through man. I was called of God, who laid his hands on me, watch this, before I was ever born. So Paul wants them to know, don't you get this thing twisted. Now, I know the hateration. I know the gossip. I know the rumors. I know your posts on Facebook. I know y'all been tweeting about me, that I was not one of the original apostles that Jesus Christ called when he was walking down by the seaside of Galilee. I was not called then, but he wants to let them know I was called. Ooh, preach that thing, boy. Teach the Bible, Barclay. Watch this. I wasn't called then, but I was called. And what he's going to show in Galatians 1, 13 through 24, now we discussed all of this last week, is that I didn't have my call on by the seaside of Galilee. But I want you to know that I was on my way to persecute and to kill some Christians in Acts chapter 9. And the Lord stopped me cold on that Damascus road, blinded me, talked to me, call me, commission me, ordain me, and I witness his resurrection. That's his whole argument in Galatians 1, 13 through 24. And so he's going to say to them, in essence, listen, don't you get this thing twisted. I was an apostle called by God and not by man. And then, as you can see on the screen, the second narrative, and we'll review again what I just said, because I want you to see the scriptures. Galatians 2, 1 through 10, where he's going to have to go back up to Jerusalem, or rather, he goes back up to Jerusalem, and he meets with Cephas, that is Peter, and he's going to meet with James, the brother of the Lord. So he's going to make two trips to Jerusalem, and his argument is going to be, listen, I went to Jerusalem, but I'm independent of Jerusalem. Jerusalem didn't call me. Jerusalem did not sanction me. Jerusalem did not give me my papers of ordination. They didn't give me my preaching license. And he wants them to know that. And then in Galatians 2, 11 through 14, he's going to argue that when I went back up to Jerusalem the second time, all of us were on the same page. We had an agreement. I didn't want them to think that I was preaching something contrary to what they were preaching, and we got behind closed doors. We worked this thing out. We all understood one another. So we were in agreement. But in Galatians 2, 11 through 14, he's going to argue that even though we came to an understanding, even though we came to agreement, Jerusalem broke the deal. Okay, I can hardly wait to get there. All right, now watch this. Watch what I have on the screen. I have on the screen. These narratives are intended, the three stories I just kind of reviewed for you, are intended to defend both his apostleship as from God and not of human origin, and thus his gospel is not of human origin. Now, these three narratives make 3 points. Point number 1, Paul's gospel and apostleship are independent of Jerusalem. Number 2, Paul's gospel was in agreement with Jerusalem. And number 3, it was Jerusalem that broke faith with the agreement, watch this, over one of the issues that has been dogging me, and that has to do with these kosher food laws. And he's going to show it was Peter and Barnabas who broke faith with the agreement that all of us understood. All right, now, so watch this again, real quickly, because we covered it last week. He's going to say that I am independent of Jerusalem at Galatians 1, 13. And if you read down, and I'm not going to read all of this because, again, we covered it all last week. He says, but watch this. And he talks about his former life in Judaism. He talks about his how he was more zealous than others were for the tradition of the fathers. He says, I was summa cum laude. I was valedictorian of my class in relationship to the traditions and to the law. No one had more zeal and determination that I had for upholding the law of Moses. But verse 15, but when he who had set me apart before I was born, watch this, not by the seaside of Galilee, when Jesus called those apostles, he says, watch this, that was set apart before I was even born. Oh my goodness. There's so much preaching right through there on that doctrine of election and even predestination. I just don't have time to go at it. But when he who had set me apart before I was born, I can identify with that because I believe in all my heart. I believe in all my heart that the eternal purpose of God for my own life, watch this, was to be a gospel preacher. You didn't hear what I just said. I believe that with all my heart, that, that the Lord intended for me to be a gospel preacher, one who preaches his gospel of the death, the burial, resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead for our sins. That's God's eternal purpose for me. And watch this, friend. That's all I've done all my life. Ever since I was 8 years old, I sensed the call of God on my life. I began preaching when I was 16 years old. And for now, almost 54 years, I've been preaching the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And like Paul, who says that God set him apart before he was even born. And then watch this. He set him apart. Watch this. And then he called him. Let me try that thing again. I'm sorry. This thing getting good to me. He set him apart. Mm-hmm. Uh, and then he called me by his grace. I want you to watch this. 2 time periods. He set him apart before he was born, but he was called by grace on the Damascus Road. Teach that Bible, boy. Watch this. He set him apart before he was born, but he's called by grace on that Damascus Road. All right, let me try it again. Uh, he was set apart. Watch this. From eternity past. Before there was a when or where. Before there was time. Before God had ever created the heavens and the earth and created mankind. Watch this. He'd already been set apart. But watch this. Time had to catch up with a decision that was made in eternity past. Ooh, I wished I had hours here tonight. And watch this. The same thing is true in your own life. God had determined before the foundation of the world, watch this, that in love, Ephesians chapter 1, beginning at verse number 3, that God wanted to save you. Made a decision. But watch this, because it is the will of God that none should perish, but all should come to faith and to life and repentance in him. See, it's not God's will that man should go to hell. It's not God's will. That's man's choice. God decided a long time ago that he loved you so much that, watch this, that he wanted to save you. But watch this. God does not want robots. God, watch this. In the beginning, when God created heavens and the earth, God said to the sun, let there be, and it was. Watch this. The sun, the moon, and the stars had no choice except to do what God told it to do. And then God made a man. And God put something in man that he did not put in the sun, the moon, the stars. And that is, he gave us a will. And with will, watch this, we can choose to obey God or disobey God. See, man has something that sun, moon, and stars do not have, and that is a will. We can choose to accept the gospel, or we can make a choice to be disobedient to the gospel. Now, if you choose not to obey the gospel, watch this, there are consequences for that decision that you no longer have. Boy, preach that Bible. When I choose to obey the gospel, God chooses to save me. But when I choose not to obey the gospel, there are consequences that I no longer have control of, because the consequences of that decision will now kick in. And the consequences of this decision is an eternity away from God. Watch what Paul says. But when he who had set me apart, that's eternity past, before I was born, and then in time, he called me by his grace. He was pleased to reveal his son to me in order that I might preach him among the Gentiles. And he says, watch this, when that happened, read it on the screen, I did not immediately consult anyone. Watch this. Nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me. He says, but I went away into Arabia, and I returned again to Damascus. And then watch this. I did not immediately go up to Jerusalem. For 3 years, I stayed away from Jerusalem. And then I went up to Jerusalem to visit Cephas, stayed with him 15 days. But I saw none of the other apostles except James. There were 12 of them. Judas has been replaced. So there are 12 of them. He said, I only saw 2 of them. All he's trying to get across to them is simply this: his gospel, his calling, his apostleship is independent of Jerusalem. They didn't issue me preaching license. So watch this. Don't get it twisted. I was an apostle before I met the other apostles. That's Galatians 1, 11 through 24. Now, let's go to second, I think. He says, I was an apostle before I met the other apostles, so don't get it twisted. Don't say, I don't have an authority. Don't say, I'm not called like the other apostles. The Lord called me, and when he called me, I did not go to Jerusalem and say, okay, I'm number 13. I'm number 14. Don't get that twisted now. I was an apostle, called of God, before I ever met Peter and James, and then later on, the rest of the apostles. All right, number 2, second narrative. Paul's gospel and apostleship are in agreement with Jerusalem. Follow me carefully. And watch this argument. Chapter 2, verse 1. Then after 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem, this time with Barnabas. Ooh, watch this. And taking Titus along with me. Well, watch this. First time I went up, went by myself. But this time, Barnabas is with me. Titus is with me. Remember Titus. He said, I went up because of a revelation and set before them the gospel that I proclaim among the Gentiles. Ooh, watch this. Ooh, watch this. I love this. In order to make sure I was not running or had not run in vain. Paul says, uh, after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem, met my fellow brothers, my fellow apostles. But I went up again after 14 years. And this time, uh, Barnabas is with me, son of consolation. And watch this, Titus is with me. Titus is a Greek. Please don't miss this, because what they're saying about Paul is that uh, he was not one of the original ones. So he has no authority. Now he may call himself an apostle, but he's not really an apostle because he was not with the original group. And now they're headquartered in Jerusalem. Now watch and watch this. Now Paul says, after 14 years, I went back up there. And this time I'm taking Barnabas and I'm taking Titus. Titus is a Greek. He ain't a Jew. They're dogging his trail because, watch this, he's letting folk in the church, he's letting folk travel with him who ain't been circumcised. And he brings Titus with him, along with Barnabas. And that's going to create some sure enough social issue and trouble in Jerusalem. Because remember, the temple is still there. And so when he goes up to meet with them, apparently they're going to go into the temple. But this Titus ain't been circumcised. And Paul says, at 14 years, I go back up there. Barnabas is with me. Titus is with me. And he says, I wanted to be sure that we're all on the same page. I want them to know that I'm preaching this gospel of grace, just like they have been preaching this gospel of grace. And like them, I am not requiring Gentiles to become Jews in order to become Christians. That's why they were dogging it. You let these folk come in without circumcised. Y'all eating all this pork and neck bones and pig feet. You let them eat all this high blood pressure food, and so now he brings Titus with him. But look at verse 3. When I brought Titus with me, introduced him to the apostles, the apostles did not force him to be circumcised, though he was a Greek. Did you hear what's going on? Now. In other words, it was all them, watch this, getting on the same page. The apostles did not require Titus to be circumcised. And yet there were people dogging Paul's trail, telling him, you ain't all you supposed to be because you letting these Gentiles folk come in among us without being circumcised. And Paul said, when I took Titus up, I introduced him to the apostles, and they did not require him to go to the bathroom. Y'all gonna get that on your way home. They did not require him to be circumcised, even though he was a Greek. He said, now watch this. Even though they did not require him to be circumcised, word got out. Somebody posted it on the Jerusalem Church of Christ Facebook page. This Paul has brought this Gentile, this Greek, to the temple. We can't let them people come in our church. Ooh, doesn't that sound familiar? We can't let those kinds of people come in our church. I thought I was going to finish this tonight, but it's clear to me right now that's not going to be possible. So let me just meander here and make the point like I really wanted to make it. Watch what happened. The apostles accepted Titus without circumcision. But look at 2:4. He says, but there are some false brothers who done posted some stuff, who done tweeted, who have tweeted some stuff. Watch this. While we were all in the meeting, while we we're all getting in on the same page, somebody opened up the side door. Somebody opened up a back door, and it was harmony. It was unity. It was praise the Lord. We're all preaching the same thing. We're all preaching the same gospel. And then, watch this, some alligator slipped in. You see the term slip? It's a term that describes the action of an alligator when there is a prey in the water. Come here. I guess I've been watching too much of that Louisiana Bayou channel. But one of the things I learned about alligators is whenever an alligator see a prey in the water, it doesn't just make a splash. And an alligator slips in the water. An alligator eases into the water. And in a quiet, unnoticeable, stealthily kind of a way, he eases upon his prey, and with that strong jaw, takes him into his grip. Paul says, while we were meeting with the other apostles, getting on the same page, encouraging one another, validating each other, that the messages, though we are preaching them to different racial groups, the message does not change. And he says, some alligator slipped in. But watch this. We're in the political season now, with all this politics that's going on And people are making this argument about the southern border and all these illegal folk coming in, taking these black jobs, threatening our way of life. Uh, and so there's a whole lot of discussion about illegal immigrants. In other words, they come across the border, uh, but they don't come through a recognized port of entry. That's the term. One of the ways this word is used, not only is it used as an alligator, it is used about someone who enters a country in an illegal kind of way. And so Paul is saying that some alligators have slipped in, some illegal immigrants have slipped in, but they have slipped in to spy out our freedom that we have in Christ Jesus. And watch this. And when they came in, look at verse 5. When they came in, when the gators came in, they wanted to force circumcision on Titus. And he said, and I love this, he said, I stood my ground. He said, ain't no way you're going to force this young man. You're not going to force him in the bathroom. You're not going to force him to be circumcised. Because in your attempt to do that, watch this, you're trying to bring us again into slavery. Come here. You trying to get us to go back to Egypt. And in political talk, we ain't going back. In other, no, we ain't going back to Egypt. The Lord delivered us from Egyptian captivity and slavery. And through the preaching and the accepting and obedience and receiving of the gospel of Jesus Christ, a gospel of grace, you're not going to make us go back to law. You're not going to circumcise him. You're not going to put the chains and the restrictions of the law of Moses on him. And Paul said, I don't care what title you have in front of your name or behind your name, I'm not submitting unto you. And he said, I didn't yield to them, and I didn't submit to them even for a moment, so that the truth of the gospel might be preserved. And then watch this, and I'll pick this up next week. Paul's gospel and apostleship are in agreement with Jerusalem. He says, though my call is independent of Jerusalem, my gospel and apostleship are in agreement with Jerusalem. In other words, when I met with the apostles, we all got in the room, got on the same page. Watch this. They received me as an equal. I'm going to pick that up next week. All right. But I want you to watch this. He said, now, the alligators didn't. The folk who slipped in fact, he calls them false brethren. That's a sermon all by itself. These false brethren, these alligators who want to try to get us to put our spiritual vehicles in reverse, turn around and go back to Egypt, they tried to push what the apostles accepted. And when they tried to force circumcision on Titus, I stood flat footed. And friend, that's where you ought to stand. And that's where we ought to stand. And until next Wednesday night, may the Lord of the harvest bless you, and may he bless you real good.